Welcome, everybody, to the latest in our series of London interviews. As we've only got about just under 90 days now to go to the London International Shipping Week in September. And it's already sort of proven to be a very, very big event with good number of events going on to the LISW calendar. So there's going to be a lot of good level and high level discussions and topics under discussion during the week. Very, very delighted today to welcome Optima Shipping Services, who've come in very much as a sector partner, ship broker, practical sustainability solutions. Optima, one of the world's sort of leading shipbroking houses, delivering data-driven forecasts and risk assessments across the dry bulk, tanker, container, offshore sectors, and advising their owners, charterers, and investors on carbon markets, ESG compliance, and low-carbon project development. Angelica Kemene, and I hope I got the pronunciation of your surname right there, Angelica.
Yeah.
A market analyst and decarbonisation strategy, head of that, of strategies at Optima. Now, Angelica, you hold 2 master's degrees, mathematical training and finance and carbon management, and you're completing a PhD focused on risk assessment for sustainable shipping investments. You're a familiar voice on the global conference circuit, which is good, and you are known for challenging traditional finance and investment models so they align with long-term environmental as well as commercial goals. Angelica, welcome to the London interviews. You're speaking today from Greece, and we've just been talking now about the onset of the summer over there, so it's starting to warm up a little bit over there in Greece, not only on the shipping industry side, but also temperature-wise.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. Good morning. Yeah, it's very warm in Greece indeed. It's summer.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I mean, I go over there to Athens certainly 2 or 3 times a year and looking forward to Poseidon next year as well, an amazing event. Could you start a little bit just by talking to us about Optima? Just give us a little bit of a snapshot for the listeners. What is Optima? And what are the sort of services you're providing? I mean, you're based in Greece, you're very well respected in the market, but please just give us a little bit of a snapshot about the company.
Well, Optima is actually a one-stop shop of services, and we really want to act, and we act as an advisor and a consultant to our clients, going hand in hand with whatever their needs are. We do provide a lot of services, and we do want to act as the bridge of all the challenges that predominantly the ship owners are facing and the world on the opposite side. We do offer predominantly S&P and repair services, research and consultancy, ESG, and anything that has to do with climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. Cybersecurity services, this is a very recent service we expanded in. Chartering projects, this is also a very recent service we added. We don't do actually chartering, but Who knows what we'll do.
I want to specifically talk today about ESG and the whole issue of WEXI and CII for ship owners and look at the whole issue of sustainability. And I know that's an area, as we've already touched on, that you specialize in Optima. First of all, before we sort of get into the nitty-gritty, what are the challenges facing the industry with regards to ESG, would you say? Because there's a lot happening in all of those areas, on the environment, on social, on compliance and governance and what have you. What would you say are the sort of key areas that the industry is really needs to focus in on?
Let's say the key challenge at the moment is that the momentum in sustainable finance or in all themes of sustainability, it comes at the moment with some headwinds. So very recently, we've seen the EU stepping back on some mandatory ESG disclosure timelines. And then there was this changing political environment in the US that have actually slowed the pace of new climate regulation. And this has created some uncertainty and in some cases delayed, let's say, the next wave of ESG-driven investment. But I think that even with this policy poses, the underlying pressure from global investors or charterers, particularly as Asian and Middle Eastern capital markets are starting to adopt their own ESG frameworks, is actually what I want to say is that the direction is set. While politics can nudge the pace, the direction is set. So even if with those challenges that come mainly from policy, I think that the sustainability journey is here and all parties will collaborate for that.
And I think, this is really an example really of how shipping just gets on and does its job. And I think really with regards to, you've got a lot of regulatory compliance, WXI, as we said, CII, but you've got this whole issue of, integrating in ESG into operations and the way that the owners and charterers operate and what have you. How can they transition, do you think? And just looking at this side, we'll come on to sustainable ship finance and investment in a second, but how can ship owners transition from the sort of regulatory compliance side to integrating ESG into everything that they're doing? Because it's all about ensuring long-term viability and attractiveness to investors and charterers, isn't it, for ship owners?
So, as you said, regulatory compliance is no longer enough. It's now just the baseline. So the real differentiator is moving beyond the minimum and embedding ESG as a strategic driver. Today, this means aligning global standards and framework that exist for ESG, such as the GRI and the SASB. Importantly, the Science Based Targets Initiative, which has expanded its methodologies to cover the maritime sector. This is a watershed moment for shipping because for the first time, ship owners are being called to set emission reduction targets that are not only measurable, but also independently validated and aligned with the Paris Agreement. So as these standards become the norm, investors and charterers increasingly expect full transparency and a credible pathway, let's say, to net zero. They're looking for companies who can demonstrate measurable impact, not just in environmental metrics, but across social and governance indicators too. And this actually has profound implications for shipbroking, where we were once focused solely on technical and commercial data. Clients now require granular reporting on emissions or crew welfare, supply chain ethics, and maybe alignment with those standards that I mentioned earlier and the Poseidon principles.
No, that's interesting. So you're saying it's moving away from purely a rate situation and availability of a vessel to issues like ESG. And I know it trickles down, doesn't it, from the charters down to the owners and even with the customers or the companies that you're dealing with, like the ship managers or the ship suppliers, you're looking for, proof of their ESG compliance as well in those areas. But shipping has always been accused of being too fragmented. How does this sort of work out across the industry? Because you'll have leaders in all of this side of it, but you'll also have other companies who are quite a little bit slower to adopt.
Yes, this is true. So if the industry wants a truly just transition, we will need to make ESG as accessible as the ambition to decarbonize. So there's a genuine risk of a two-tier market emerging with large players able to unlock, for example, green finance or able to make collaboration deals with other providers other than owners. And then the small owners maybe are left on the sidelines, but it's not inevitable to be able to help them. If we talk about a democratization, let's say, of anything that has to do with a green transition, this will depend on making ESG data collection and reporting accessible and affordable. This is something actually that digital platforms and third-party rating tools are starting to enable. So I think that the future will reward those who are actually agile and willing to partner for capability, not just scale. And
it's interesting because it's, that this sort of demand within the industry for sustainability-driven data and the way it's changing the relationships, it's sort of just moving the whole thing away from being a tick box scenario, isn't it?
Yes, this is true. So the checkbox risk is real. There is a temptation to do the bare minimum and publish a glossy report and move on. And that's that's specifically for the ESG report. But we are starting, I think, to see a real cultural shift, especially as market forces and stakeholder expectations converge. So ship brokers can be powerful agents of these chains. We have the data, the deal flow, and the client relationships to move the industry from compliance to conviction.
Yeah.
And by embedding ESG metrics into every conversation, not as an afterthought, but as a value lever, we can push clients to think strategically, not just how do I comply, but how do I compete in a decarbonizing world?
That's interesting. And coming on to ship finance and investment and sustainable ship finance and investment, this is you talk about this sort of long-term viability and attractiveness. You've got to do that to attract in the investors and the charterers. But when you look at green financing and sustainable investment within shipbroking, what trends are you looking at the moment, and how can clients sort of leverage these opportunities because they've got to modernize their fleet, with new builds and what have you. How can they leverage all of these opportunities within all this?
So for this, we may talk about, let's call it the sustainable brokering in market dynamics. So this sustainable brokering is increasingly about being a catalyst for change and a trusted advisor throughout the vessel life cycle. So today we go far beyond simply matching ships and cargoes. We are actually integrating emissions data, regulatory forecasting, and even life cycle analysis into our core broking solutions. So this means that in S&P, for example, the future value of a vessel is increasingly tied to its carbon profile and retrofit potential, not just its age or deadweight. So here the role, for example, of the repairs broker is more crucial than ever. We can guide owners on suitable retrofit options, help plan optimal yard times, and even advise on CapEx strategies that align with both regulatory requirements and market opportunities. And here I can offer an example, a very recent example we had in our company where we used a digital twin modeling to simulate retrofit options for a client, allowing them to compare investments in energy efficiency technology upgrades. And that model actually projected close to 20% emission reduction with a 2-year payback. So that was what we offered, was actually a level of clarity that was almost impossible to achieve with spreadsheet alone. But then also on the chartering side, we can help clients, and that's for the projects, tanker projects I mentioned earlier. We can help them staying up to date with the latest decarbonization technologies, ESG frameworks, and of course, all those regulatory changes that are essential.
That's amazing, Ray, because I think really, and I want to come on to the point about sustainable broking, within the market itself at the moment. But, you're based in Athens, the green market is very, very important to shipping. There's over 870 Greek ship owners, or there used to be, probably more now. How sort of tuned is a Greek market, for instance, to this whole issue of ESG and sustainability? Is it a market that you're sort of focusing in on a lot? Is it a lot of education that you have to do? How geared up is the Greek market to this type of approach now?
It's true that brokers are becoming educators in this new landscape. So not only do we help clients interpret new regulations and turn compliance into competitive advantage, but we also invest heavily in our own expertise, staying up to date with the latest decarbonization technologies, all those frameworks and regulatory changes is essential so we can provide clients with the most current and actionable advice. One of the most exciting innovations, for example, is the use of digital platforms and real-time data to create transparency around emissions, enabling charterers to select not just the best ship, but the most sustainable one. So the broker's role is becoming even more consultative, solution-oriented, and data-rich, which is why our commitment to ongoing education and market intelligence is a huge value add for clients navigating the transition to low-carbon shipping.
It's really, really refreshing to see this approach, Angelica, be serious, because, we hear and we write and we read about, this whole issue of sustainability, but here it's in practice. You're using data here to actually bring in value to a vessel or bring in value to a charterer or to an investor into that operation. And it's really, really interesting to see this new development.
Thank you. Well, it's just because the climate change mitigation and adaptation is actually a science. So you need to adapt. And since the role of the shipbroker has changed, and if we can call out ourselves without wanting to be extra romantic, let's say I see the future broker as a sustainability architect, coordinating data, technology, finance, and operations to deliver more than just fixtures. In a sense, say the broker becomes a steward of reputation and long-term value, not just short-term profit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting, looking at how all of that has evolved, but it has to because of the demands from the industry. But taking it on to the fleets themselves, and also you've got a whole raft of other issues there with new technology coming in and, needing to use innovation and digitalization to drive value to the bottom line, got alternative fuels. There's a lot of issues that owners and operators need to sort of consider. What advice would you give? I mean, when you're sitting down with your clients, you look at everything that's available there from an operational efficiency and long-term environmental impact. What sort of advice can you give?
Well, so the path to future proofing fleets in shipping is all about combining strategic patience with decisive and well-timed action. So the reality is that the transition to net zero will be both incremental and multi-fuel for many years. And there's no single solution that fits all. So my advice is always to invest in flexibility and energy efficiency first. And energy efficiency upgrades like hull and propeller optimization, advanced voyage planning, or even digital monitoring and energy-saving devices not only have the potential to cut emissions significantly, but also to deliver immediate cost savings and make fleets more resilient to rising fuel prices and stricter regulations. And maybe with all these geopolitical tensions at the moment and the oil price that will probably go up, this makes more sense now. So in fact, I see efficiency as the essential bridge. It buys owners time and gives them a competitive edge while the market for alternative fuels develops. And when it comes to those alternative fuels and new technologies, the temptation is to wait for clarity, but that risks making the company falling behind. So instead, I would recommend building flexibility into new investments, maybe opt for modular retrofits, dual fuel engines, or ammonia-ready ships that would allow you to adapt as the regulatory and fuel landscape.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, when you talk to the industry about fuels and alternative fuels, the one certainty is the uncertainty about it all, which is interesting. And also the, concerns over infrastructure. But what is happening amazingly is that the debate is accelerating and new initiatives. And I mean, this has opened my eyes really to, what the industry through what Optima is doing here is really focusing in on this whole issue of sustainability in all of its forms and actually, making it work and actually, plotting a way forward. And, it's going to be very, very exciting as to what's going to happen over the next, months and years ahead, really, as we drive towards the 2050. But the one last point, really, we're all collaborating, all of us, in everything that we do for a greener future. There's no doubt about it. And shipping is all about collaboration because you've got the brokers, you've got the owners, the operators, you've got the innovation providers, the technology providers. But you've got, the companies that are driving ahead at 100 miles an hour, and you've got others who are, as you rightly say just now, Angelica, you got, others who are waiting to see and what have you. And that's perfectly understandable. Collaboration is important, isn't it? If shipping and maritime is going to achieve its net zero emissions.
The truth is that there is a lot of talk, let's say, about collaboration. But in reality, I think collaboration is only as strong as the incentives behind it. So while we see inspiring examples like co-investments in fuel infrastructure or maybe joint R&D and digital platforms for emissions tracking, most owners are still cautious about sharing data or strategy unless there's a clear commercial upside in some way. So the challenge isn't just about building trust or breaking down silos. It's about creating structures where collaboration actually delivers measurable value, whether through lower costs, improved market access, or risk sharing. Because split incentives remain a major barrier. For example, owners may hesitate to invest in retrofits if charterers reap the fuel savings. So to overcome this, we need smarter contract models, shared investment mechanisms, and sometimes even regulatory nudges that align interests along the value chain. And as brokers, we are uniquely positioned to structure these win-win scenarios, bringing parties together, not just to talk, but to act where there's real mutual benefit. Because I think the next decade will reward those who build business models that make collaboration pay off.
No, I totally agree. And it's been an absolute delight talking to you today, Angelica. Looking forward to actually catching up with you and your team during LISW 25 in September. And, so grateful and very pleased and delighted that you've come on board and working with us as our sector partner. It's going to be an interesting and a very exciting week, I think, in September for London International Shipping Week.
Yeah, it's going to be. The pleasure is mine to be collaborating with you the past months. I'm really looking forward into this week on September. Let's schedule, all of us, because there are so many events coming on and we need to schedule beforehand.
Well, no, exactly right. And I think like we say to a lot of our partners, sponsors as well as supporting organisations, that there are a lot of events going on. There'll be a real focus on a number of key issues. Sustainability will definitely be one of them. So, opportunities also, Angelica, for you to maybe speak at some of the other events that are going on during the week. So have a little look at the event calendar as well and get in touch with some of those event organisers. Because the sort of message that you're delivering today is cutting edge and is up there. So you can definitely add value to the week. And I just want to say thank you very much indeed for your time today, but also for your involvement at LISW. I think the week is going to be a better place as a result of that sort of blue sky thinking that you're bringing into it.
Thank you so much for your nice words.
It's very, very exciting. So, Angelica, thank you for today's conversation. I found it absolutely fascinating. And just as a message to all the listeners, you'll be able to access London interviews, all of the series of interviews that we've got on the LISW.com website. And we look forward, Angelica, to seeing you and your colleagues during LISW in September.
Looking forward to meeting you live as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Bye.